Under the towering lights of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the Detroit Lions were locked in a routine preseason clash with the Atlanta Falcons. It was a warm night in Atlanta, the kind of evening where football feels like a celebration more than a contest, a rehearsal before the grand symphony of the regular season begins. For players, it was an opportunity to sharpen skills, to prove themselves, and to secure their place on the roster. For the fans, it was a chance to glimpse the promise of the months ahead. But as the fourth quarter unfolded, that sense of normalcy was shattered in a moment that reminded everyone, players, coaches, and spectators alike, that this game, for all its pageantry, is played on the edge of human limits. Morice Norris, a 24-year-old defensive back fighting for a permanent place in the league, lined up on defense as the Falcons pressed downfield. Norris was no stranger to fighting for his career. Every snap mattered. Every tackle was a statement that he belonged. Here, on this field, under these lights. Then, in a split-second collision, everything changed. As Norris lunged to bring down the ball carrier, the opposing player's knee struck the side of his helmet with devastating force. The sound was muffled beneath the roar of the crowd, but the effect was immediate and alarming. Norris fell to the turf, his body rigid, legs trembling uncontrollably. In the seconds that followed, the game itself ceased to matter. Players from both teams looked on in shock. Some removed their helmets, some dropped to one knee. Coaches and teammates crowded the field as medical staff rushed in, their movements urgent but precise. The stadium, moments earlier alive with energy, sank into an uneasy hush. On the broadcast, the cameras avoided lingering on Norris's motionless form, but the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. Trainers worked to stabilize him, carefully, immobilizing his neck and spine. The kind of methodical care born from knowing exactly how fragile the human body can be in moments like this. Minutes passed. 10, 15. The crowd stayed silent except for scattered murmurs and whispered prayers. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes on the field, Norris was secured to a stretcher, lifted into an ambulance, and driven to a trauma center. It was the kind of scene no one ever wants to witness, a reminder of football's thin line between glory and danger. And then an extraordinary decision was made. With just over 6 minutes left in the game, the coaches and league officials agreed the contest would not continue. There would be no final whistle, no last push to alter the score. The players would not be asked to refocus, to hit again, to carry on as if nothing had happened. Instead, they gathered together in the center of the field, Lions and Falcons, alike, heads bowed, united in the understanding that there are moments when human life outweighs the game. Back in the locker rooms, the atmosphere was subdued. These were men accustomed to pushing through pain, to finishing what they started. But tonight was different. Tonight, the unspoken truth of their profession hung heavier than usual. This is a violent game, and even the strongest, fastest, most prepared athletes are not invincible. Hours later, as news trickled out, the tone shifted from fear to relief. Morice Norris was stable. He had movement in his arms and legs. He was breathing on his own. And then came his own voice, breaking through the uncertainty. Not through a press conference, but through a simple message to those who had been worrying. I'm all good. Don't stress. Appreciate all the love. It was a short statement, but it carried the weight of the night's emotions. In those few words, fans found reassurance, teammates found relief, and the league saw once again how quickly the narrative of a game can change when the stakes shift from points to life itself. Medical experts familiar with such injuries later explained what may have happened. A high-speed collision causing both a jarring of the brain and a violent movement of the neck, the kind of impact that requires immediate and careful intervention. Spinal injuries demand precision. Every second matters. Every movement is calculated. That night, the staff's training showed in the calm, methodical way they worked. For Norris, the road ahead would be measured in caution, not speed. Concussion. Protocols are not negotiable in today's NFL. Even as fans speculated about when he might return, the truth was that no timeline mattered more than his long-term health. Coaches and doctors alike emphasize patience, the understanding that the measure of a player's career is not just how quickly they return from injury, but how well they protect their future. The images from that night, the players kneeling together, the silent crowd, the ambulance pulling away, will remain etched in memory far longer than any preseason highlight reel. Football is often compared to war, but it is moments like this that reveal its truest nature, a community bound by shared risk, mutual respect, and an unspoken pact to stand together when one of their own is down. This was not the first time an NFL game had been halted for a serious injury, and it will not be the last. Over the years, similar moments have led to the sport evolving in how it treats player safety. Where once the game would have resumed after a quick pause, today the standard is different. The decision to end the game that night reflected a growing acknowledgement that compassion has a place on the field. In the days following the incident, Norris's name trended across social media. Fans from Detroit and Atlanta, and from far beyond, sent messages of encouragement. Former players shared their own stories of injuries and recovery. Across the league, there was a collective sigh of relief that the night's worst fears had not been realized. For Norris, the experience was a test of more than just physical resilience. It was a confrontation with the fragility that every athlete carries beneath the armor of pads and the confidence of skill. And yet, in the aftermath, he showed the same determination that had brought him to the league in the first place. His message was one of gratitude, of faith, and of resolve to move forward. When the Lions return to the field, whether or not Norris is among them, the echoes of that August night will still be felt. It will be there in the way players check on each other after a hard hit, in the quiet nods exchanged across the line of scrimmage, in the understanding that beyond the rivalries and the roaring crowds, they are all bound by the same risk and the same respect for one another. And so, that preseason game between the Lions and Falcons will be remembered not for the score, but for the humanity that emerged when the game stopped. It will stand as a reminder that even in the most competitive arenas, there is room for compassion, for perspective, and for the simple, profound truth that a player's life will always be worth more than the play.